I had nothing to do with that. Thank you, Ethan. Great job. We have a few speakers here this evening that we would like to bring up. Our first speaker is Bill's brother, and what better way to find out about a guy than to hear from his brother. So, Bob.
Sorry, Bill.
No, you're not.
So these guys keep me up really well here because I'm going to give you a different type of bio than you did, and I'm going to fill in some of the pictures of when Bill was a little bit younger. So we were, Billy and Laurie, my sister Laurie's over here. We had my mother and dad had 3 kids. I'm the youngest. I firmly believe that they had me because they looked at the first 2 and they realized that they had to try a little bit harder. Bam, here I am. So, one of the things I have to say, when I was putting this together, I thought, man, this makes our parents look bad. But, so I have to, before you judge my parents too harshly, I have to kind of put this in context, right? And so the first thing is, everything turned out good. Right? Bill, minister. Laurie, 35 years is an elementary school teacher, and I did no serious jail time. So we were able to get through that. And the other piece, and this is really important to remember this as I go through some of the events of our childhood. These events all occurred before the invention of parenting. Right? So even at that point too, there was a basic assumption that kind of was through all families at that point, at that time, was that parents really didn't want to spend that much time with their kids. And it was evidenced by things like approaching my mom and saying, I'm bored, and she said, well, if you're bored, I'll give you something to do, which we didn't want to hear that. Or the more common was, go outside, you're making me crazy. So we went outside a lot when we were little, and we probably did things we probably weren't supposed to be doing when we were outside. But before I get to that, I want to give you another little piece of context. I'm a wanderer when I talk, so can you hear me if I come over here? Okay, I have a big voice, I'm sorry. So there's the 3 of us. Laurie being the oldest and the only girl, she was bossy, right? Very bossy. Which is why she became an elementary school teacher. She still can't talk to you without pointing her finger at you, so you know. Right? Billy, as you're going to see, was a little bit crazy. He did some silly things growing up. I was a very reserved, timid, gentle person in the family. And so I just want you to understand that as I talk a little bit about these guys, because it was really hard on me. It was very difficult for me growing up. So like I said, my mom would frequently send us outside. Just get out of the house. So these are some of the things that Billy and I would do outside. We had a driveway. Now, again, many of my references tonight are going to date us, all of us here. We had a red dog driveway. Does anybody remember what red dog driveways were? You know, those nice big, I think they were like shale, but they were really, really sharp. So Billy and I, for entertainment, would stand at each end of the driveway and just throw rocks at each other. It was fun. Until somebody got hit. Right? So that was one thing we would do outside. Another thing that we would do is we would go out into the woods behind our house. Now, I have to clarify something about those woods. What those woods really were like about 5 trees, a whole bunch of dead Christmas trees, a thorn bush, and like a 4x4 piece of moss. But I think it may or may not have been astroturf from somebody's front porch that they threw out. And back in those days, everybody had to put carpeting on their front porch. That was a very strange thing. So one of the things that Billy and I would do, and all of our friends would do out in the woods, is that we would go out and we would find a tree, about like that, not too wide, but big enough one of us to climb it. So one of us would climb it, and then the other one would chop it down. We would ride trees down. So this was my mother saying, get out of the house. We were obeying what we were supposed to be doing, and we would go out and we would climb trees and chop them down. There were very few rules in our house growing up. We were very fortunate. To be quite honest with you, we were actually pretty good kids. Well, they were pretty good kids. And but one of the rules was, you could not hit my sister. He could pound me senseless, but we couldn't hit my sister. So Laurie knew this, of course. So what Laurie would do was do things to us. Billy, to this day, I believe he still carries pencil lead in his arm from a nice pencil attack from my sister.
It was dark.
What's that?
It was dark.
It was dark?
I missed it.
You were trying for his head? What do you mean? It was dark. How about that? It was dark. I've never heard that excuse about his head. It was dark. Wow. So Billy and I would get back there. We knew exactly how to get back at her. When she would not be at home, our G.I. Joes would attack her Barbie and Kens. And she would come home, and Barbie and Ken would be sometimes dismembered in the yard or in various places. So we would get our satisfaction in some way, somehow. Another thing that Billy and I used to do a lot of was fight. Now, not fight, though we did fight. We sometimes just fought for fun, right? And we didn't just fight for fun. We had to fight. Our language was, who can fight the dirtiest? So that's what we would do. We would hit each other with things. The only thing you weren't allowed to do was hit each other in the face. That was like our general rule. And I hit Billy in the face one time by accident. I paid dearly for that. But we would fight, and then this is where my mother would come into play. Because we would fight, and by this point, we were big enough that we could damage things. So my mother would come in the room and we're fighting, and what would she say? Take it outside. So Billy had me dragged. Now remember, I'm 3 years younger than Billy at this point, and he's at all points, I guess. He would drag me out into the yard, kicking and screaming, and we would have pretend fights. And again, it was actually kind of fun, wasn't it? It was kind of fun. Yeah. So at one point we decided, because we didn't hit each other in the face, because we were, I don't know, gentlemen, I don't know what we were, but we decided we really wanted boxing gloves. And my mom's like, no, you're not getting boxing gloves. So what did we do? We took winter mittens, we put washcloths in them. Billy was bigger than me. The age difference was really important at this point, so he had to get on his knees because he was that much bigger than me. And we would just wail each other. Right? So my mom finally relented, and she bought us boxing gloves for Christmas. So we're opening up boxing gloves Christmas morning. What do you think my mother said? Worse. Don't hit each other. I think she said something else. I don't know because I got hit and I went down. So I'm not quite sure what happened. But don't hit each other. My mother, God bless her. So we would do a lot of these things, and I should have learned early on too. One of the things was what always tripped me up was that he would be planning something, or we would be planning together, and he would say to me, "You go first." Like, you think I would have figured that out after a while. So one of the things I remember going first on was my mother had, for some reason, these unusually large green onions. So we decided, and by we, I mean Billy, decided that we should see who could eat one of these onions without having to drink any water or eat anything. Oh, I thought it would sound like a really fun afternoon. So we took it outside, and Billy says, "You go first." So I took my onion, I took this enormous bite out of this onion, and I was like in pain. What does Billy do? He tackles me and sits on me so I cannot go into the house to get milk, water, bread. He never intended to eat his onion, just me. It's just very sad. We also used to like throwing things. We threw a lot of things. Sometimes in anger, sometimes for fun. We had a dartboard in our basement. And our basement wasn't finished, it was just cinder block wall with a dartboard against it. And we would throw darts so hard that they would stick in the cinder block. And invariably, when we would throw the darts, Billy said, "Go get darts." He always held one in reserve for my butt. And again, you think I'd have figured that out. We also, our parents had, and I'm really going to date us now, my parents used to have a big stack of those old 33 and what is it, a third records. You remember those ones? Or wait, 78? They were kind of mid-sized and they were thick. So we would wing those at each other in the house. We would wing those at each other until my mother caught us and she made us stop. So what we decided to do was 45s. They were smaller and faster. So we started winging 45s at each other. He threw a 45 at me so hard, missed me, that it stuck into a wall. Not drywall, plaster. That's when I decided that the game was over, which was signified by me screaming and running out of the room. But there was damage to the house. I will admit there was one point where Billy said something to me made me mad, and I had a baseball bat. And it was those good baseball bats. Back in the old days, if you went to the park game on bat day, you got a real baseball bat. And I had a real baseball bat. And I was across, not from here to Billy away, maybe a little bit closer. And he said something, and I threw it at him. And it spun, and it put a perfectly round indentation into the wall in my parents' hallway. That hole, I think, was still there when you bought the house, wasn't it, Kim? Yeah, that's true. So we threw things at each other. We kind of had fun doing that. It was a good time. We went through a smoking phase where we would smoke cadets pipes, or cigars, or remember, and I don't know what the correct name for them is. We always called them Toby trees. I don't know if that's the correct name. They have those long seeds, pods. We would take those and try to dry them out. And then try to smoke those. Oh, that's nothing. I don't even understand why this is even something a human being would say. We tried to smoke pretzel rods. Pretzel rods. We would break off both ends and you like that thing. Yeah, that flame would shoot straight through that pretzel right down your throat. What was wrong with us? It's so funny because it's also true. I mean, it is just ridiculous. It is so true. But we were helpful kids at times. I remember one time our parents were going out and they said, "Clean the garage before we get back home." So, fair enough. I'm watching TV, right? And they go out the door, and I'm watching TV, and I hear this click. He's got a BB gun pointed to the side of my head. He goes, "You're going to clean the garage." So I cleaned the garage. And another point. By my brother. And at some point, I had been watching too many detective shows or something, but he had me moving stuff around in the garage, and and I had a metal garbage can, and I got one point, and he was like, I knew where he was behind me with the gun, and I grabbed the lid, and I turned around, and I bashed him in the face, and I started running, and he shot me on the inside of my thigh. I dropped to the ground, and the next thing I hear it click again. He's standing right over talking to me. Don't do that again. I'm so glad my parents came home that night. Yeah. He was also helpful to kids in the neighborhood, but they liked to for some reason. He really had a vendetta against ants. So he was always out with a magnifying glass burning ants. I don't know what it was, but he was burning ants. So sometimes he would be real nice to us, me and my friends, and he would he would burn baseball bats and stuff, or he'd burn our initials into them and stuff like that. And he would burn everything, especially if you were sitting beside him on a sunny day and you weren't paying attention. You would feel like this, something's going on in your arm. And then you realize your brother's sitting there with a magnifying glass trying to burn you. Yeah. So what else did you do?
That's enough.
No. Couple more.
Just a couple.
I did get even with him one time. And it was an accident. I don't recall if it was Halloween. Was it Halloween? Or was it just like a Saturday? We were weird. So I think, whatever, it must have been Halloween, but we got one of my grandfather's long trench coats. And I was on Billy's shoulders, and we had the coat on, so we looked like this very, very tall person walking up the street. Well, we're walking up the street, and because we're so tall, I hit my head on a tree branch. Right? Billy thought this was funny. So he proceeded to hit every tree in the neighborhood. The problem was that the Sukolsky family lineage has an offshoot of when people laugh really hard, they pee. So I fortunately outgrew that about 10. My sister kind of worked the family mantle on that one. And she will still, okay.
Yeah.
So anyways, we're walking up the street, and Billy's banging my head off the trees as we go up the street. And I start laughing. I also start peeing. Billy is trapped inside a coat. And I was peeing all over his and he's trying to get me off, and he's doing everything, but we both end up on the ground, and he's pulling that coat off. That's the one time I think I got the best of it. Pee on. So there was a point once Billy got a little bit older that he started to export his brand of terror outside of just me. And he would do things like, to my dad, who was a very hard-working man, worked minimum 12 hours a day, every day, our entire lives. He would come home, he'd be so tired, fall asleep in the living room watching TV in his rocking chair. My dad had his own chair. Billy, being the really kind and empathetic and understanding son, went out to the kitchen, got into the refrigerator, got a handful of cold mashed potatoes, brought them back in, put them in my dad's hand, and then tickled his face. So my dad went up like this and just had mashed potatoes alone. Fortunately, my dad was a very sound sleeper. He never woke up. My mother came into the room, saw what was going on, screamed at us, and cleaned up my dad before he ever woke up. And then another thing that he used to do, I was not involved in this at all, so good. He and his friends would drive around in a van, and there'd be unsuspecting people walking on the sidewalk, and they would pull up in the van, whip open the door, and just scream really loud at them. And then drive away. So that was interesting. So I want to have a couple more quick stories here.
That's good.
What's that?
That's good.
You know, Bill, you're going to make me just keep talking. So, just one quick story, but this one's an important story, because I need your help on this one. Because this one is really bad. I need your help on this one. Don't look at me while I'm telling you the story. I want you to look at Billy. I want you to feel your eyes on him when I tell you this story. This was my the thing in childhood I learned the most. So Billy and I fight, and Billy would be on top of me because he's bigger than I was, and he would sit on my chest, and he would pin my shoulders down to the ground. I couldn't move. He would then squeeze my nose so I couldn't breathe. And I would open my mouth to gasp for air, and he would spit down my throat. Always going to come back to me. Yeah. So as Billy and I got older, really though, we much more time together is a lot often is around fishing, especially when we're on vacation. And just two quick fishing stories now we're done. The first one was, there's many things. First of all, you have to understand when Billy and I fish, a disaster is going to happen somewhere, somehow. Somebody's going to fall in, somebody's going to hurt something, something's going to get broken, something's going to get lost, like my pickle bucket, for one. You just threw it into the ocean. But we were fishing, oddly enough, at the exact same spot a couple years ago when the tragic incident occurred. Tragic incident, right? I named it that. I got a fishing hook stuck in my thumb. And I said, Billy, I have a fishing hook stuck in my thumb. And he said, well, let me try to get that out. So he's pulling on the fishing hook. Okay? So I'm screaming because it's a fishing hook. He's screaming. I don't know why he was screaming. But we were both screaming, and we never got the fishing hook out. We had to go to the hospital and get it cut it out there. So that was the one event. One last story, and this is the most important story, because this is the story that I always have a hard time telling. So one year for Father's Day, while we're at the beach, Karen and my wife both very sadistically set us out on a fishing charter. Right? Billy gets seasick. So he had Dramamine like behind each ear. I don't know where he had it. He had it everywhere. So we go the first day, and the water's so rough that we couldn't stay. They wouldn't take us out. So we go back the second day, and we go out. And sure enough, we're riding out there. I'm sitting there, I've got like this huge cigar, I'm smoking a cigar, I'm looking all around, and Billy's just getting green. We stopped the fish. Every time we would stop the fish, Billy would throw up. So he was throwing up in the bathroom, he was throwing up over the boat, he was just throwing up. It was really funny. Did you catch fish? Okay. No. So anyway, so here's the point. This is when Billy was in West Newton. When Billy came home, he told all his buddies at West Newton, he told them that story. And he made fun of himself about how he was sick. And he was throwing up, and he was really, just making fun of himself. And I knew that he would tell them that story. There's another part to it. While we were on that boat, there was a woman, a middle-aged woman, who was on the boat too. Sorry, just a second. She was on the boat because she had quit her job to move to Stone Harbor to take care of her friend who was dying. And she was on the boat for a 4-hour respite. That's all she wanted. She was just trying to get away from it. So she told Billy her story. Now, Billy's on vacation. All he wants to do is relax and fish, and by that point, not throw up. And she's telling him this story, and he's ministering to her the whole time. He's trying to take care of her. He's praying with her. But see, when he came home, he didn't tell me about that. He just made fun of himself. And that's how he and Karen are. That's them in a nutshell. They're humble. They're caring. They're kind. And I'm just so glad for